Good morning. Good to see everyone this morning. And I guess this will be our last Sunday, Sunday school class for a little while. Obviously, we're just having combined services since we're going to start our March for Mission. So this will be our last Sunday school class until, I guess, the first Sunday in April. So hope you all enjoy it. And I'm going to do something a little bit different this morning. It's going to be, I told Adrian and Aaron, I said, y'all think it'd be bad if we just had just a little bit of fun in Sunday school? And so maybe y'all get as much entertainment out of what I'm going to teach on this morning as I do, but I do enjoy it. So anyway, if you have your Bible, turn to the book of Job. The book of Job, chapter number 2. The book of Job, chapter number 2, and we're going to look at the interaction between Job and Job's three friends. And so it was quite, an interaction, and Job had some really good lines that he used to his friends. And I hope as we go through this in Sunday school, I hope sometimes you just sit down and just read the whole book. It's only 42 chapters. It'd be a pretty quick read, but just read it. Just read it all. Just read it front to back, and listen to it. And what you're going to see is, we know the story of Job. It's the adult Sunday school class. I'm not going to go into the story of Job. Everyone in here understands, that God picked Job out. The devil came and was standing before God, and he said, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And the devil was, allowed to do certain things to Job. And then he come back and said, "Skin for skin," and he said, "Let me touch his health, and then he'll curse you." And God said, "Okay, you can do everything but let him die." And so we know that in this chapter right here, basically in verse number 7 says, So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. So if you think about boils, if you've ever had a boil, it's not any fun. It's miserable. If you ever have something like that, and depending on where it's at, whether it's under your arm or something like that, you're constantly going to just be trying to keep that thing from touching anything. You think from the very, very top of your head, Cody, to the sole of your foot. And if you've ever been injured in any way, basically, if you've been injured in any way, you're trying to look at somehow, some way, can I lay down? Can I sit down? If I can't sit down, can I walk? Can I, what can I do? I remember when my dad had his heart attack, he couldn't sleep laying down forever, and so he slept in a chair. And he slept in a chair for months. And so, but you're just trying to find relief. Well, if you've got boils from the very crown of your head to the sole of your foot, you're not getting any relief. There's no standing you can do. There's no sitting you can do. There's no laying down you can do. There's no relief. And so we have to remember that when Job's three friends show up, that's what they see. They see a man who had basically lost everything. They see a man who'd basically lost everything. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd built all through the years. His children are all gone. His wife is still there, but we know from verse number 9, she tells him, verse number 9, then said his wife on him, "Dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die." And so I don't know about you. Cody, my wife said some bad things to me in 25 years of marriage. She said some things that that I wish she hadn't said, and she said some things that she probably wished she hadn't said. And any marriage, I've said some things I wish I hadn't said. But she's never said to me, curse God and die. She may have thought it, Brother Parks. She may have thought it a few times. But she never said it out loud to me. But, here's Job's wife. And maybe it was a compassionate thing where she's like, if you just curse God and die, you'd be better off. And really, you're going to see, which we're not taking the time to study that, but you're going to see that Job's like, I wish I hadn't even been born. And really, his prayer a lot of times was like, I wish God would just let me die. Just let me die to get this over with. And so anyway, but in verse number 11 it says, now when Job's 3 friends heard of all the evil that was come upon him, they came everyone from his own place, Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. Now remember that as we're going to go through this, remember that they came to mourn with Job and to comfort him. And so that was their intentions, Brother Parks. When I read it, we obviously know, again, we know the whole story, and we know that that's not how it ended up. That's not how it ended up, but their original intention was to just show up and just mourn with Job because their friend had lost all that stuff, and then they were just going to say some kind words to him. They were just going to try to comfort him. And so it says in verse number 12, and when they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voices and wept, and they rent everyone his mantle and sprinkled dust upon their heads toward heaven. So they sat down with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great. Now, so again, here they are, and I think honestly, when they showed up, Riley, I think they had good intentions. I think they had good intentions. I think when they showed up, they really thought that they were there to help Job. I think they felt like, hey, Job's been our friend for all these years, and we're just going to go and we're going to say kind words to him and comforting words. We're going to tell him Romans 8:28 still in the book. We're going to tell him, hey, don't worry about it. God's still in control. We're going to say all them words that people say whenever something bad happens. And I know Romans 8:28 was sarcasm right there, but I hope y'all caught it. But anyway, so they show up like that. But it doesn't take them very long of sitting there. And again, they sat there for 7 days, Brother Wayne. They sat there and didn't say a word. They just sat there. And they sat there, and they sat there, and I know it's not a biblical term, but an idle mind is the devil's workshop. And so they sat there, and here's a man that God allowed to be afflicted by the devil, and God allowed to, for the devil to take all his things away. And now here he is, and Job is cursing the day of his birth in chapter number 3. And so these guys listen, and then you get to chapter number 4, and so there's actually 3 rounds if you read it, and we're just going to zoom through it. But there's 3 rounds of talks where Eliphaz is the first, then Bildad goes second, then Zophar goes third, and there's 3 rounds of talks, and then Zophar just says, you know what, I'm done, boys. I'm not talking in the 3rd round. But anyway, so this is the first round where each one of them has their go. They have their opportunity to say what they're thinking. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes, and Job's basically going to tell them this in a minute, but sometimes the best thing for you to do is not say what you're thinking. I'll be honest with you, a lot of times in my life, the best thing for me is not say what I'm thinking. Because Brother Parks, I get myself at whether it's at work or whether it's at home or whether it's in Sunday school or wherever I'm at, sometimes the biggest problem I create is because I say what I'm thinking, or maybe I say without thinking. But anyway, so here in chapter 4, verse number 7, here's Eliphaz, and he starts to speak, and he at the very beginning he gets on to Job, In verse number 3, he says, behold, thou hast instructed many, and thou hast strengthened the weak. So he's going to say, hey, look, he said, we looked up to you. We looked up to you, and now that this has come on you, now look at you. Look how poorly you're dealing with this. But in verse number 7, he says, remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off? Even as I have seen, they that plow iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same. Now, if you remember from chapter 2, they're his friends, and they showed up to comfort him. But very quickly, it turns from comforting him to, hey, listen, I'm just going to tell you something right now, Job. You wouldn't be going through this if you didn't deserve it. You would not be going through what you're going through right now. And it's kind of just in general. Eventually, it's going to get very pointed. But at first, it's just kind of in general. They're like, hey, look, Job, we hear your complaint. We listen to you. And Job, apparently there's something you're not understanding. And the thing that you're not understanding is if you hadn't done anything wicked, God wouldn't have punished you this way. And so he gets on to him. Then if you look in verse number 13, he says, in thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep falleth on men, fear came upon me, and trembling which made all my bones to shake. Then a spirit passed before my face, the hair of my flesh stood up. It stood still, but I could not discern the form thereof. An image was before mine eyes. There was silence, and I heard a voice saying, shall mortal man be more just than God? Shall a man be more pure than his maker? Behold, he put no trust in his servants, and his angels he charged with folly. How much less in them that dwell in houses of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, which are crushed before the moth. They are destroyed from the morning to evening. They perish forever without any regarding it. Doth not excellency which is in them go away? They die even without wisdom. And so now here Eliphaz is like, hey, God sent a vision to me. God sent a vision to me, and because I received this vision, I understand. Have you ever seen someone try to help? They try to help, and they try to sound spiritual and act like the words that they're speaking are words from God. But we know from the very end of the book, from Job chapter number 42, that God calls out Job's three friends, but he calls out Eliphaz specifically, and he calls him out specifically and gets on to him for speaking in the place of God when it wasn't God that told him to speak it. Now, what you're going to see here, and what I want us to understand, is there are going to be some things, Cody, that they say is right. There are going to be some things that they say. I mean, Brother Leon, sometimes you read what Eliphaz and Bildad and so far say, and I got no argument with them. I got no argument with them. But what they were accusing Job of wasn't relevant. I mean, you can jump up and down and point your finger at someone and tell them stealing is wrong, but if they never stole anything in their life, what's the point of telling them stealing is wrong? And so here is Job, and Job's big crime was fearing God and eschewing evil. That was his true crime, was fearing God and eschewing evil. And God had so much confidence in Job, he said, go ahead, devil, I'll let you do what you want to against him, and he's gonna maintain his integrity. But these guys sat there and they watched Job for 7 days, and then they heard Job speak, and as soon as they heard him speak, they're like, oh, wait a second. I don't like what I heard right there. I don't like what I heard right there, and so I'm going to correct him. But now, if you look in chapter number 6, and like I said, we're gonna roll through a bunch of verses right here. In chapter number 6, verse number 21, here is Job speaking. He said in verse number 21, "For now ye are nothing. Ye see my casting down are afraid. Did I say, bring unto me, or give a reward for me of your substance?" And so Job Job is not only dealing with the fact that God turned the devil loose in his life, he's not only dealing with the fact that his children are gone, and his substance is gone, and his health is gone, and his wife has already said, curse God and die, and now his 3 friends have shown up, and instead of comforting, they're correcting. And while they're correcting, now here's Job is not only, trying to get some light from God and get a word from God, but now he's having to defend himself to his friends. And he's like, hey, he said, number one, I didn't ask y'all to come, and even if I did ask y'all to come, I didn't ask you for anything. It wasn't like I said, hey, I'm poor now, put some money in my bank account. It's not like I'm saying, hey, I don't have any kids, so what are y'all going to send some people over to help me do something? Well, again, all my servants are gone. He said, I didn't ask that. He said, or deliver me from the enemy's hand, or redeem me from the hand of the mighty. Teach me, and I will hold my tongue, and cause me to understand wherein I've erred. He said, and at this point, Job, again, he's trying to be patient with them, Cody. He's trying to be patient with them. He said, hey, look, boys, if y'all can teach me, I'm listening. If you can teach me, I'm listening. But he says, in verse 25, how forcible are right words, but what doth your arguing reprove? And I have trouble saying that word. That's another one of them words I have trouble saying. But what doth your arguing reprove? He said, guys. And again, so far, only one of them is spoken. But Job realizes that the other 2 are on ready. Brother Parks, they're on ready, and they've got things they want to say, but they haven't got their chance to say it yet. And so he says, let me ask you something, boys. You came to comfort me. You came to comfort me. So what does your arguing reprove? Do you imagine to reprove words and the speeches of one that is desperate, which are as wind? He said, boys, if y'all gave me something, I'd be glad to get it. He said, I'm desperate. If y'all had something that you could say that would actually help me, I'd be glad to hear it. Verse number 27, yea, ye overwhelm the fatherless, and ye dig a pit for your friend. Now therefore be content, look upon me, for it is evident unto you if I lie. He said, guys, he said, look, y'all jumping all over. He said, you're overwhelming me. He said, I've got nothing. He said, right, I mean, obviously, he said, you're overwhelming the fatherless and digging a pit for your friend. He said, y'all have overwhelmed me, not with your kindness, not with your love, but the fact that you turned on me, and you turned on me so quickly. In chapter number 8, we have Bildad. He takes his opportunity. He takes his chance. I'm not going to read it, but in chapter number 11, Zophar takes his opportunity. And again, like I said, when you read them, sometimes the things they're saying are right, Gabe. Sometimes the things they're saying are true. They just don't apply to Job. And so, but they've decided that they do apply, so they get on to Job. But if you look in chapter number 12, Job has listened to Eliphaz, he's listened to Bildad, he's listened to Zophar, and he's listened to them, and they've kind of accused without completely accusing. They didn't fully accuse him, but they kind of just skirted around and said, hey, it wouldn't be this way if sin wasn't here, there wouldn't have been judgment. And so in chapter 12, verse number 1, Job answered and said, no doubt, but ye are the people. And so here's Job, and again, in a lot of ways, Brother Parks, I think Job's had a sarcastic side. He had a sarcastic side, and here it comes out, because he says, no doubt, he said, you're the people. He said, as a matter of fact, and again, this is what I'm reading into this, but as a matter of fact, when God created all the people, really, you 3 are the ones that he should have modeled everyone after, because y'all are the ones. Y'all have so much wisdom. He says it right there. And wisdom shall die with you. What on earth is going to happen to the earth whenever you three die? Because you three are so wise and no one else has any understanding. Which again, I'm having to skip through that, but you're not understanding that there's a contention back and forth of Job saying, hey, you know, I have wisdom. And they're like, oh yeah, well, if you think you have wisdom, we got wisdom too. You know, we're gray-headed as well. And again, like I said, I'm skipping a whole lot of stuff here. But Job says, okay. He said, apparently y'all are the people. Y'all are the people, and wisdom's going to die with you. But right there, he actually says it. But I have understanding as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Yea, who knoweth not such things as these? He said, guys, he said, everything y'all have said is things that are known. Yes, I agree with you. If someone sins, then God is going to judge them for their sin. I understand that. And so, but in verse number 4, he said, I am as one mocked of his neighbor who calleth upon God, and he answereth him. The just upright man is laughed to scorn. He that is ready to slip with his feet is as a lamp despised in the thought of him that is at ease. He said, guys, he said, look, he said, I'm ready to slip. I'm ready to fall. I'm almost gone, Brother Wayne. And instead of you guys comforting me, I'm despised in your eyes. And I know, like I said, Job's going to say some things that I enjoy, but there's a lot of truth in the book of Job. There's a lot of truth in our own lives that we have to watch and be careful. Because sometimes, Gil, we don't judge righteous judgments. We don't know the whole story. We only know a part of the story, Cody. And sometimes it's, well, you know, because I know so-and-so, and because so-and-so's telling the story, I'm just going to believe them without ever finding out the other side of the story. And sometimes you need to find out the other side of the story. And you make a judgment, and then you react, and then you react to someone and you treat them in a certain way, and then you find out later, oh, wait a second. I didn't know the whole story. I shouldn't have acted that way. I shouldn't have said the things that I said. I shouldn't have treated them that way. I shouldn't have shunned that person because I didn't know what was going on. Or hey, I took this person's word and they were lying. And so you have to be careful here. You have to be careful to stand in the place of God and make these great speeches. If you look in chapter number 13, verse number 1, here's Job, and he's continuing, and like I said, Job kind of bounces back and forth, where he defends himself to his friends, and then he goes back to his prayer to God, and then he defends himself to his friends, and then he goes back to his prayer to God. In chapter 13, verse number 1, he said, Lo, mine eye hath seen all this, mine ear hath heard and understood it. What ye know, the same do I know also. I am not inferior unto you. So again, like I said, there was this battle back and forth of, they're like, oh, here, Job, we're going to teach you something. And Job's like, well, I mean, guys, we all know the same thing. You're not teaching me anything. Surely I would speak to the Almighty and desire to reason with God. And Job's like, look, he said, if I could just talk to God, if God would just talk to me, and I could just understand why I'm going through this. I mean, again, I think, and God chose not to do this, but I think had Job been told, Cody, from the beginning that God was going to allow the devil to do this, I think it would have been easier for him to go through than what he went through. But God didn't tell him. Why? Because God said, that you can do all these things and he's still not going to curse me. And so, but had Job known what he was going through, it wouldn't have been the darkness that he had to go through. And so because of that, he was really struggling, because I'm trying to find God. I'm looking on the left hand, the right hand. I'm looking before me, behind me. I'm looking everywhere, and I can't find God. And it's easy for people to become judgmental when someone is in that place of darkness. It's easy to be judgmental when someone is in that place of darkness where they're kind of stuck and they don't know what to do. In verse number 4, he says, but ye are forgers of lies. He said, y'all just making up lies now. Y'all are just making stuff up. It's not even that, hey, I'm imparting some wisdom that you don't know, Job. Now you're just forgers of lies. Ye are all physicians of no value. Have you ever met someone that way? That they always have something to say, Brother Tyrone? And they add a lot of words to a conversation, but they don't add anything to a conversation. They add a lot of words, Riley. I mean, there are a lot of syllables coming from their mouth, but really when it comes to adding to the conversation, they just don't add a whole lot to the conversation. And that's what Job said about his friends. He said, y'all are physicians of no value. He said, you've decided that y'all are a doctor, and I've got a sickness, and y'all know the cure, but nothing you've said has cured me. Nothing you said has remotely cured me. Again, my father-in-law used to say the worst part of cancer was all the cures. My father-in-law used to say that all the time. He said the worst part of cancer was all the cures, because when someone found out he had cancer, they'd come up and say, it's apricot seeds. You need to start eating apricot seeds, or chemo, or radiation, or you need to go to Mexico and drink the water out of this place right here, or you need to do this, or start doing that, or stop eating this and start eating that. He said that's the worst part of cancer was all the cures. And Job said that they were physicians of no value. In verse number 5, he says, oh, that ye would altogether hold your peace. He said, I just wish you'd be quiet. He said, honestly, look what he says, and it should be your wisdom. He said, I just wish you'd just be quiet. Do you know how much, and we know the Proverbs says this as well, but do you know how much wiser y'all would sound if you just didn't say anything? You ever met someone like that? I mean, sometimes you see someone, and you can tell me y'all don't do it, and that's fine. I won't believe you. But you can say it. But I mean, we judge books by their cover. We look at someone and we make a judgment. I mean, you look at Brother Wayne back there and you're like, that man's a smart man. I mean, look, anyone that wears their glasses way down on their nose like that has got to be a smart man. And so, I mean, but you look and sometimes you make a judgment. But then you make that judgment and then that person starts talking. And like, this guy, he don't know anything. This guy doesn't know anything. I mean, it'd be like someone show up on y'all's construction site, and they watched a bunch of videos, and they went to the store and they bought all the tools, and they come on the construction site, and y'all start talking about start talking about I need this board cut, and I needed something to the long something, and they just stand there, and you realize real quick, oh, wait a second. This guy's got all the stuff, and he looks like he knows what he's doing, but he doesn't have a clue. Like, whenever I go help Bub, I don't have a clue. He starts hollering out things. I'm like, hey, on that speed square, what's that number on that speed square? Which one am I looking for? Why? Because I don't do it, Cody. It's not what I do. It's not what I do. So I'm not going to show up on a construction site and be like, all right, Silver, come over here. Let me tell you how to do that right here. That's not what I'm going to do. Because I'd tell him something wrong. And so, but there are some people that, Brother Parks, that's never crossed their mind. It's never crossed their mind that they don't know what they're talking about. And they just can't help themselves. And they just can't help themselves. And what are they? They're forgers of lies, physicians of no value, and if they just hold their peace, it'd be counted to them as wisdom. And so, if we move on, in chapter number 15, Eliphaz takes another shot, and it gets a little more personal. It starts getting a little more personal, and then in chapter 16, in chapter number 16, then Job answered and said, I have heard many such things. Miserable comforters are you all. He said, guys, again, I wish you'd have listened to me. I wish you'd have listened to me back in chapter number 13 when I said if you just hold your peace, it'd be counted as wisdom, but you couldn't help yourself and you just had to say more. You just had to say more. And so he said, miserable comforters are ye all. And Gil, I mean, again, some of the most awkward times to me is like at a funeral. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry about, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say, Riley, so I just try not to say a whole lot of anything. I try not to say a whole lot of anything. Because, for the most part, I don't know what they're going through, and I don't know how they're feeling, and I don't know what they're, I don't know. And yes, you can speak in great generalities and say, God understands and God's in control, and those things can be said. But sometimes even those things, I mean, it's hard for someone to grasp onto that when they're going through the things that Job was going through. But you sure don't want to be jumping onto somebody in that time. Be like, well, old so-and-so, he'd probably still be here if he didn't commit them sins. You're probably going to be better off since he's not here. Probably better off because she's not here no more. People don't want to hear that. And so Job said, miserable comforters are ye all. Shall vain words have an end, or what emboldeneth thee that thou answerest? I also could speak as ye do. If your souls were in my stead, I could heap up words against you and shake mine head at you. Job said, guys, I mean, if the role was reversed, I could sit here and say all kinds of things to you. I could sit here and say all kinds of things. I'm not going to look at it, but they intimate, they insinuate that Job committed sins in his youth, and Job even references the sins of his youth, but they insinuate that it's the sins of Job's youth that are coming back to haunt him. But Job says in verse number 5, he said, but I would strengthen you with my mouth, and the moving of my lips should assuage your grief. Though I speak, my grief is not assuaged, and though I forbear, what am I eased? He said, guys, I'm listening to y'all, and if the role was reversed, and I came and I stood beside you, I would do my best to only say words that would comfort you. I would do my absolute best to only say, if I did speak, the words that I spoke were words that would only comfort and not wound. If you turn over to chapter number 19, verse number 1, again, so chapter 18, Bildad gets his second opportunity. But in chapter 19, then Job answered and said, how long will you vex my soul and break me in pieces with words? Y'all remember the statement, you heard it most of the time when you were kids, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's not a true statement. That's not a true statement. Words can hurt. Again, like I said, I mean, you have to be careful. You have to be careful because, especially in a church setting, a lot of people are not sitting in a church today, not because someone did something to them, but it's because someone said something to them. And a lot of times, Riley, it's not because the most spiritual person in the church had been praying and praying about it, and God said, hey, I want you to go to that person and just sit down and talk to that person and help it. No, a lot of times it's the most unspiritual person in the church, and they just can't help themselves, and they just spout off words, and they say something out of line that they shouldn't have said, and that person gets wounded, and they don't get over it. And so here's Job saying, how long will you break me in pieces with words? These 10 times have ye reproached me. Ye are not ashamed that you make yourself strange unto me. He said, look, guys, like, you're not helping. And Brother Parks, you'd have thought that they'd have stopped. In Job chapter 20, Zophar takes his opportunity. In Job chapter number 21, verse number 1, but Job answered and said, hear diligently my speech, and let this be your consolation. Suffer me that I may speak, and after that I have spoken, mock on. He said, guys, I just want you to hear me, and I've already come to the conclusion, Gil, that I'm not going to get you to stop. I've already come to the conclusion that you're not going to stop. You've already made up your mind, and even though we were friends, and however long that friendship was, you never felt these things about me, or if you did feel these things about me, they were never brought up before, but now they're being brought up. So I just got a few words, just a few words, and as soon as I'm done, those few words, mock on. Just take another swing at me. Take another hack at me. Just make fun of me some more. Ridicule me some more. Just mock on. He said, as for me is my complaint, as for me is my complaint to man, and if it were so, why should not my spirit be troubled? Mark me and be astonished, and lay your hand upon your mouth. He said, guys, you would be so much better if you just looked at me and didn't say a word and just said, oh, and just lay your hand upon your mouth. He said, just don't say anything. You could help me the most by not saying anything. But they couldn't help themselves. So look in chapter number 22. This is where it gets serious, Gabe. In chapter number 22, verse number 5, here's Eliphaz, and again, like I said, God specifically calls out Eliphaz, but in chapter 22, verse number 5, he said, is not thy wickedness great? Now we know that these words are not true. We know that these words are not true. We know the whole reason Job went through what he went through was because God said, here's a man that fears me and eschews evil, and you can do all these things to him, and he still will not. He'll still maintain his integrity. And so, but here's Eliphaz, and first it started out with, hey, you understand that when someone sins, God's going to judge those sins in a general sense. And then the next time he spoke, it got a little tighter. But Brother Leon, now he's to the point where now he's taking the gloves off. He's taking the gloves off, and he said, oh yeah, well, I'm about to tell you, Job. And so he says, is not thy wickedness great, and thine iniquities infinite? There's no measure to the amount of iniquities that you've committed, Job. He said in verse number 6, for thou hast taken a pledge from thy brother for naught, and stripped the naked of their clothing. Thou hast not given water to the weary to drink, and thou hast withholden bread from the hungry. But as for the mighty man, he had the earth, and the honorable man dwelt in it. Thou hast sent widows away empty, and the arms of the fatherless have been broken. Therefore snares are round about thee, and sudden fear troubleth thee. Again, you say, why do churches have church problems? Because friends like Job's. Why do churches have church problems? Because friends like Job's speak out of turn. They don't know what they're talking about, and they decide that they can throw their 2 cents in. Do you know what, in 2024, you know what 2 cents is worth? Basically, nothing. 2 cents, but you understand, I mean, what's 2 cents worth in 2024? What are you going to buy with 2 cents, Brother Wayne? What are you going to buy with 2 cents? When I was a kid, we used to ride our bicycles over to El Lobo's, and they had penny candy, Riley. And so my mom, when she washed clothes, any change that ended up in the washer or the dryer, she laid up on the dryer. They never told us we couldn't take it, and so we took it. And so I don't call it stealing, but you understand. So there was change up on there, and Brother Parks, we just get a hankering for candy, and we just go down there, and we 5 cents would get you 5 pieces of candy. And so we would just get candy. We'd ride over and well, what are you going to buy for 2 cents now? Tell me one thing you can buy for 2 cents. Nothing. And honestly, people that just have to give their 2 cents, that's what their 2 cents is worth most of the time. Nothing. That's what it's worth most of the time. And you're saying, are you saying I shouldn't ever try and help someone? No, try and help someone. But be careful. Be careful once you cross that line into trying to help someone to now that you have become their judge. And you've become their judge. And so now here's Eliphaz, and he's accused Job of all kinds of things that the best I can understand, Job never did a one of them. And he had no proof of any of them. And yet he decided to throw them out anyway. In chapter 26, in chapter number 26, verse number 1, but Job answered and said, how hast thou helped him that is without power? And how savest thou the arm that hath no strength? Again, I challenge every one of us in here to ask ourselves, is this going to help or is this going to hurt? Does this help? When I say this, and again, confess your faults. Y'all, I told y'all I'm a wind-up toy. Wind me up, and until it gets unwound, I'm not unwound. And so, even in my own life, I'm like, man, I wish I'd have just been quiet right there. I wish I just hadn't said anything. And there are times that you need to speak. I'm not saying never speak, but I'm saying you better be 100% sure that it's God telling you to speak before you go off on a rant and a tangent. Because there's, like I said, you talk to people who are not in church anymore. What's their biggest complaint? Hypocrites. That's their biggest complaint, hypocrites. And those of us want to say, well, there's hypocrites everywhere. There's hypocrites on the construction site. There's hypocrites on the Teamsters Union. There's hypocrites, at the Walmart. There's hypocrites at the grocery store. There's hypocrites at the restaurant. There's hypocrites at the gas station. There's hypocrites everywhere you go. There's hypocrites. Do you stop going to the gas station because they're hypocrites? No, because no one likes to walk. Do you stop going to the grocery store because there's hypocrites? No, because you're going to eat. So why stop going to church because there's hypocrites? It's a ridiculous argument, but yet it's an argument that's almost universal. Why do you not go to church? Well, hypocrites. Bunch of hypocrites down there. Bunch of hypocrites. They say one thing, do another. Blah blah blah. What happened? Well, I was doing this, and they jumped on me. And sometimes, again, like I said, they may have needed jumped on. They may have needed that, but there are some people that jumping on is different than others. Some people you can't say anything to them. They're so fragile that you can't say a single word without them shattering. And there are other people, they're tempered glass. You can throw stuff at them, it just bounces off. I think Silver's that way. You can mess with Silver all day long, and he just like, oh well, have a good day. Nice to talk to you. Silver's just a good guy. But other people you mess with, and you do the slightest thing, they're shattered. That's not who Job was right here. But we have to learn that the ear trieth words, and you better be careful those words that you're speaking, because you're going to give an account for every idle word. Every idle word. And so Job tells him, he said, how hast thou helped him that is without power? How savest thou the arm that hath no strength? How hast thou counseled him that hath no wisdom? He said, guys, I've come to the place where I don't even know. But you haven't helped. I've come to the place where I don't even know what's right. Job's praying that God would just let him die. He's like, I've come to the place I don't even know. There are things I thought I understood about God, but I'm not understanding now, and I'm so confused, I just don't know. And there are people that will jump on that person for being ridiculous, but they've never been in that shape themselves. He said, to whom hast thou uttered words, and whose spirit came from thee? Dead things are formed from under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof. He said, guys, the spirit that came from you is not the Spirit of God. It's not the Spirit of God. And the last thing I'm going to read is chapter number 27, verse number 3. Or chapter 27, verse number 3, yes. And all the while my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils. My lips shall not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. God forbid that I should justify you till I die. I will not remove mine integrity from me. My righteousness I hold fast, and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me so long as I live. Job said, boys, this conversation just needs to be over. But I'm just going to tell you, everything y'all have accused me of, that's fine, believe what you want. But I am not going to utter deceit. I am not going to lose my integrity. I'm not going to change, he said, my righteousness I hold fast. And we understand, we're not talking about someone that's a Pharisee, that's like, I'm righteous, I'm holy. That's not what we're talking about here. But we're talking about someone that God chose to afflict or allow to be afflicted, and yet here his three friends accused him really of everything. I mean, again, I skipped some of the stuff, but they accused him of everything. And Job said, hey, I just want y'all to know, whatever y'all want to think, y'all can think. Whatever y'all want to feel, you can feel. But I'm just going to tell you, in the end, I'm not changing. Not changing who I am. And we know from chapter number 42, again, let me just get to it real quick. We know from the chapter number 42, it says, this is God talking, and it was so that after the Lord had spoken these words unto Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz the Temanite, my wrath is kindled against thee and against thy two friends, for ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job hath. And so he tells them that they need to sacrifice, and he tells Job that, let's look in verse 9. So Eliphaz the Temanite and Bildad the Shuhite and Zophar the Naamathite went and did according to as the Lord commanded them, and the Lord also accepted Job, and the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. So let's say you're on the other end. Let's say you're in the place of Job and someone said something. Guess what? God turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. He had to forgive them. All the things that they said, all the things that they did, God said, I'll turn your captivity, but you're going to have to pray for your friends. So you need to be careful. Again, like I said, I was saying that the churches are not full today because of people that have been offended, but you need to be careful if you have been offended to be able to forgive. God said, Job, I want you to pray for your three friends. And Job prayed. Thank you.